Happy First Chapter Fridays! It is the last Friday of October, and I, your CCMS media specialist, am bringing to you probably the scariest book of October. It is The Forest of Hands and Teeth. This story is terrifying. I'm not kidding you, terrifying. And I'm here in the middle of Oregon, in the middle of the forest, filming this for you just to get you some spooky. It's freezing in the middle of the forest, and it's really dark. It's the night before the last Friday. And this book, The Forest of Hands and Teeth, is a dystopian novel set in the future where the world isn't what it used to be. A plague has ravished just majority of everyone in this world, and there are few people left who live in these small communities trying to stay safe from this plague that is causing most everybody to become pretty much undead. This is the story of The Forest of Hands and Teeth. The first book in this trilogy by Carrie Ryan. In the back, it reads, "In Mary's world, there are simple truths. The sisterhood always knows best. The guardians will protect and serve. The unconsecrated will never relent. And you must always mind the fence that surrounds the village, the fence that protects the village from the forest of hands and teeth." But slowly, Mary's truths are failing her. She's learning things she never wanted to know about the sisterhood and its secrets, and the guardians and their powers. And when the fence is breached and her world is thrown into chaos about the unconsecrated and their relentlessness, now she must choose between her village and her future, between the ones she loves and the ones who love her, and she must face the truth about the forest of hands and teeth. Could there be life outside a world surrounded by so much death? First Chapter Fridays, The Forest of Hands and Teeth. My mother used to tell me about the ocean. She said there was a place there was nothing but water as far as you could see, and that it was always moving, rushing towards you and then away. She once showed me a picture that she said was my great-great-great-grandmother standing in the ocean as a child. It has been years since, and the picture was lost to the fire long ago, but I remember it faded and worn. A little girl surrounded by nothingness. In my mother's stories, passed down from her many great-grandmothers, the ocean sounded like the wind through the trees, and men used to ride the water. Once, when I was older and our village was suffering through a drought, I asked my mother why, if so much water existed, were there so many years when our own streams ran almost dry? She told me that the ocean was not for drinking, that the water was filled with salt. That is when I stopped believing her about the ocean. How could there be so much salt in the universe, and how could God allow so much water to become useless? But there are times when I stand at the edge of the forest of hands and teeth and look out at the wilderness that stretches on forever and wonder what it would be like if it were all water. I close my eyes and I listen to the wind and the trees and imagine a world of nothing but water closing over my head. It would be a world without the unconsecrated, a world without the forest of hands and teeth. Often my mother stands next to me, holding her hands up over her eyes to block out the sun and looking out past the fences and into the trees and brush, waiting to see if her husband will come home to her. She is the only one who believes that he has not turned, that he might come home the same man that he was when he left. I gave up on my father many months ago and buried the pain of losing him as deeply as possible so that I could continue with my daily life. Now I sometimes fear coming to the edge of the forest and looking past the fence. I am afraid I will see him there with the others, tattered clothes, sagging skin, the horrible pleading moan of the fingers scraped raw from pulling at the metal fences. That no one has ever seen him gives my mother hope. At night she prays to God that he has found some sort of enclave similar to our village, that somewhere in the dense forest he has found safety, but no one else has any hope. The sisters tell us that ours is the only village left in the world. My brother Jed has taken to volunteering extra shifts for the guardian patrols that monitor the fence line. I know that, like me, he thinks our father is lost to the unconsecrated, and that he hopes to find him during the patrol of the perimeter and kill him before our mother sees what her husband has become. People in our village have gone mad from seeing their loved ones as unconsecrated. It was a woman, a mother, horrified at the sight of her son infected during a patrol, who set herself on fire and burned half our town. That was the fire that destroyed my family's heirlooms when I was a child, that obliterated our only ties to who we were as a people before the return, though most were so corroded by then that they left only wisps of memories. Jed and I watch our mother closely now, and we never allow her to approach the fence line unaccompanied. At times, Jed's wife, Beth, used to join us on these vigils until she was sent to bed rest with her first child. Now it's just us. And then one day, Beth's brother catches up with me while I was dunking our laundry into the stream that branches off the big river. For as long as I can remember, Harold has been a friend of mine, one of the few in the village my age. He trades me a handful of wildflowers for my sopping sheets, and we sit and watch the water flow over the rocks as he twists the sheets in complicated patterns to dry them out. "How's your mother?" he asks me, because he has nothing but polite. I duck my head and wash my hands in the water. I know I should be getting back to her, but I have already taken too long and too much time for myself today, and that she is probably pacing, waiting for me. Jed is off on a long-term patrol of the perimeter, checking the strength of our fences, and my mother likes to spend her afternoons near the forest looking for my father. I need to be there to comfort her, just in case. To hold her back from the fence if she finds him. She's still holding out hope, I say. Harry clucks his tongue in sympathy. We both know there is no hope. I heard something behind me. I hope it's the flag in the wind. His hands seek out the cover to cover mine under the water. I have known this was coming for months. I have seen the way he looks at me now, how his eyes have changed, how tension has crept into our friendship. We are no longer children and haven't been for years. Mary, I. He paused for a second. I was hoping that you would go with me to the harvest celebration next weekend. I look down at our hands in the water and I can feel my fingertips wrinkling in the cold and his skin feels soft and fleshy. I consider his offer. The harvest celebration is the time in the fall when those of marrying age declare themselves to one another. It is the beginning of our courtship, the time during the short winter days that the couple determines whether they will make a suitable match. Almost always, the courtship will end in spring with breathlaw, the weekend-long celebration of weddings, wedding vows, and christenings. It's very rare that our courtship fails. Marriage in our village is not about love. It's about commitment. Every year I wonder at the couples pairing up around me, at how my former childhood friends suddenly find partners, bond, prepare for the next step, pledge themselves to one another, and begin their courtship. I always assumed the same would happen to me when my time approached. That's because of the sickness that wiped out so many of my peers when I was a child. It would be even more important that those of us of marrying age find a mate. So important that there wouldn't be enough girls to spare for the life with a sisterhood. I even hope that perhaps I would be lucky enough to find more than just a mate, to eventually find love like my mother and father. And yet, even though I have been one of the few eligible during the past 2 years, I've been left aside. I have spent the last 2 weeks dealing with my father's absence beyond the fences, dealing with my mother's despair and desolation, with my own grief and mourning. Until this moment, it hasn't occurred to me that I might be the last one asked to the harvest celebration, or that I might be left unclaimed. A part of me can't help but think of Harry's younger brother, Travis. It is his attention I have been trying to catch throughout the summer, his friendship. I have wanted to turn into something more, but he has never responded to my subtle and awkward flirtations. As if he can read my mind, Harry says, Travis is taking Cassandra, and I can't help but feel hollow and petty and angry that my best friend has accomplished what I could not, that she has Travis's attention and I don't. I don't know what to say. I think of the way the sun shifts over Travis's face when he smiles, and I look into Harry's eyes and try to find the same shifts. They are brothers after all, born barely a year apart, but there is nothing except the feel of his flesh of mine under the water. Rather than answer, I smile a little bit, relieved that at last someone has spoken for me, while a part of me wonders if our lifelong friendship could ever grow to be something more during the dark winter courtship months. Harry grins as he drops his head toward me, and all I can think about is how I have never wanted Harry to be my first kiss, and then before his lips can land on mine, we hear it. The siren. It is so old and so rarely used that these days that it starts out with a creak and a wheeze, then a full-blown sound. Harry's eyes met mine, his face now a breath away. Was there supposed to be a drill today? I ask. He shakes his head. His eyes are as wide as mine must be. His father is the head of the Guardians, and he would know of any drills. I stand ready to start sprinting back toward the village. Every inch of my skin tingles, my heart curling into a painful fist. All I can think of is Mother. Harry grabs my arm and pulls me back. We should stay here, he says. It's safer. What if the fences are breached? We need to find a platform. I can see the terror closing in on the irises of his eyes. His fingers dig into my wrists, almost clawing at me, but I keep pulling away, pushing at his hands and his body until I'm free. I scramble up the hill toward the center of the village, ignoring the winding path and choosing instead to grab at branches and vines to help me up the steep slope. As I crest the ridge, I look back to see Harry still down by the water's edge, his hands up in front of his face as if he cannot bear to see what is happening above. I see his mouth move as if he's calling out to me, but all I can hear is the siren. The sound of it burns into my ears and echoes around me. All my life I have trained by that siren. Before I could walk, I knew that the siren meant death. It meant somehow the fences had been breached and the unconsecrated were shuffling among us. It meant grab weapons, move to the platforms, and pull up the ladders, even if necessitated leaving the living behind. Growing up, my mother used to tell me about how, in the beginning, when her own great-great-great-grandmother was a child, the siren would wail almost constantly in the village, was bombarded with the unconsecrated. But then the fences had been fortified. The guardians had formed, and time had passed, with the unconsecrated dwindling to the point that I couldn't remember a time in the past few years when the siren had wailed and it had not been a drill. I know that in my life there have been breaches, but I also know that I am very good at blocking out the memories that serve me no purpose. I can hear the unconsecrated well enough without them. The closer I get to the edge of the village, the more slowly I move. Already I can see that the platform cradled in the trees are full. Some have even pulled their ladders up. All around me is chaos. Mothers dragging children, the implements of everyday life scattered in the dirt and grass. And then the sirens cut out. There is silence, and everyone freezes. A baby resumes its wailing. A cloud passes over the sun, and I see a small group of guardians dragging someone toward the cathedral. "Mother," I whisper, everything inside of me falling at once. Because somehow I just knew. I know that I shouldn't have lingered at the stream with Harry, and I shouldn't have let him hold my hand while my mother was waiting for me to accompany her to the fence. My back is ramrod straight, and I walk toward the entrance of the cathedral, an old stone building built way before the return. Its thick wooden door is open, and my neighbors step aside as they see me draw near, but no one will look at me in the eyes. At the edge of the crowd, I hear someone murmur, "She was too close to the fence. She allowed one to grab her." Inside, it feels as though the stone walls drained the heat, the day, and the hairs on my arms stand on end. The light is dim, and I see the sisters surrounding a woman who is keening and moaning, but not unconsecrated. My mother knew to never get too close to the fences, to the unconsecrated. Too many in our village have been lost that way. It had to have been my father she saw at the edge of the fence line, and I closed my eyes at the once dampened pain of losing him slashes through my body again. I should have been with her. I want to curl in on myself to hide from everything that has happened, but instead I go to my mother and kneel, putting my head into her lap and picking up one of her hands and placing it in my hair. If I could boil my life down to its essence, it would be this: my head in my mother's lap, her hands in my hair as we sit in front of the fire, and she tells me stories handed down by the women in our family about life before the return. Now my mother's hands are sticky, and I know they are covered with her blood. I shut my eyes so that I do not have to see it, so that I don't have to know the extent of the damage. My mother is calmer, her hands instinctively tugging at my hair, letting it free from the bandana. She is rocking and saying something so low under her breath that I cannot understand her. The sisters let us be for now. They huddled in the corner with the most elite of the guardians, the guild, and I know they are determining my mother's fate. If she was merely scratched, they would monitor her through, though she couldn't be infected that way. But if she was bitten, and thus infected by an unconsecrated, there are only two options. Kill her now, or imprison her until she turns, and then push her through the fence. In the end, if my mother is still sane, they will pose the question and let her be the judge. Die a quick death and save her soul, or go exit and exist amongst the unconsecrated. We learned in our lessons that originally, right after the return, those attacked were not always this choice. They were put to death almost immediately. That was back before the tide turned, back when it looked as if it would be the living who lost the battle. But then an infected, a widow, had come to the sisters and begged to be allowed to join her husband in the forest. She pleaded for the right to fulfill her marriage vows, to be with the man she had chosen and loved. The living had already established this place, had made us safe and secure as any could be in this world of the unconsecrated, and the widow made an excellent point. The only true thing that separated the living from the unconsecrated is choice, free will. She wanted the choice to be with her husband. The sisters debated against the guardians, but it was the sisterhood's word that it is always final. They decided that one more unconsecrated would not endanger our community. And so the widow was escorted to the fence, where 3 guardians held her until she succumbed to the infection, and then pushed her through the gate just before she died and returned unconsecrated. I can't fathom leaving an old woman to face such a fate, but such is the way of choice, I imagine. The Forest of Hands and Teeth. You can check it out on Destiny Discover. It is available for you in our books to go if you'd like to come and grab it from the office. All you need to do is go to CCMS Media Center, log into Destiny Discover with your school username and password, find The Forest of Hands and Teeth, check it out. You'll get an email when it's ready to be picked up. I hope you enjoy your Halloween indoors, away from the world outside, maybe with a really, really terrifying book. I am now, seriously, I'm going to go inside now because it is scary out here. Like, I'm not kidding. See you next Friday.